Hi, hello, welcome back. My name's Cooper. I, as always, am your painting teacher, cheerleader, mentor, and today we're going to talk about portfolios. Specifically, I'm going to show you how to curate a portfolio from all of your artwork, and then some tips and tricks that you need to know about how to best use your portfolio to apply to stuff. So let's get into it. So the first thing you need to know about building your portfolio is knowing which work to include. And now the first tip I have for you to that end is play to your strengths by showing your range. So what you want to do with your portfolio is show people what you're capable of. So don't just put in one kind of work or one kind of skill. If you have multiple skills, if you do, for example, photography and painting and video and performance, you want to highlight all of those to show your range as an artist. And if you do specify in just one medium, you want to show your technical skills within that medium. So I, for example, primarily paint and draw. So within my tool belt of painting and drawing, when I have a portfolio that I apply to stuff with, it shows that range. I include both of those things. So that's tip number one. The second tip is, how do you know how many pieces to include in your portfolio? And the answer is, it depends on what you're applying to. And what I mean by that is, every time you apply to something, they're going to give you a range of images to apply with. Usually it's 10 to 15, somewhere in there. Now the next tip I have for you is always use the full number of images, because you want to give them as much information to go on as possible about who you are as an artist and how you make work and what it means. And that's only possible if you use all of the bandwidth and the storage space that they give you. So you definitely want to use all of the slots that they give you. And the next thing I want to talk about with structuring your portfolio is knowing how to sequence your images. You may think I can just plug in 15 pieces of work and hope for the best. But actually, the sequencing does matter, because when people look at your work, they look at it all together. And so it's nice to have a nice sequencing and a flow from image to image that is aesthetically pleasing and that makes sense for your work. And within that, the next thing I want to say is that generally what you want to do is bookend your portfolio with your best work. So the first image should really pop and show who you are, what you can do. And in the middle, you can put your pieces that maybe are not as strong. And then at the end, you want to really finish strong with your work. And the last thing I want to say before I show you my portfolio as an example is how important it is to have good documentation. If and when you can, it's the best thing to do is to hire someone with a DSLR camera and a lighting setup to properly document your images with even lighting. And then you process the images in Photoshop or whatever program you have there. But if you have to do it yourself, there are some rules of thumb that you should keep in mind. Obviously, you want to crop to the edges of the image, and you want to make sure you have even light. And if and when you do that with just an iPhone, you want to try to use natural light if possible, because that usually gives you an even distribution of light. And the best way to do that is to do it on a cloudy day. Yeah. But if you're going to use two lights, just lamps at home, if you have to resort to that, make sure they're the same temperature. If you have a cool light and a warm light, you're going to mess with the color balance of your image. So those are some tips and tricks I have for you. Now we're going to go to the computer, and I'm going to show you exactly what the portfolio should look like when you're applying. Okay, so let's look at my portfolio. So I've got my Google Drive here, and if I go to Projects and I go to my Art Career, then I can scroll down to my portfolio. And in here, I have a folder here called Work Sample. We're going to click on that. That has 15 ready-to-go images that I can plug into stuff, as well as an image list. The image list is very important because it tells the hiring committee for whatever you're applying for. It shows the titles, the materials, the dimensions, and when the work was made. Generally, all your work should be made in the last 2 years. If you're applying with really old work, then it's telling the committee that you haven't really been keeping an active art practice, which does matter. Okay, so you have your image list. Now we're thinking about the rise and fall of the actual images. And what I've done with mine is I've been intentional about making sure they flow into each other with a vague kind of chronology, or not vague, a loose chronology. So the first image I have is this image that really pops. It's an image from an appointment I had post-cataract surgery. It's very striking. And then emotionally, I move into this next one where there's a more intimate image of my avatar on the bed. And the next one is a close-up of that moment of another piece. So you can see it's the same composition as the eyes if you go in there as this image here. And then moving on, I start to show how I see with my tunnel vision. And you can see in the back there, there's a little painting peeking out from behind the figure. And I've included that as its own art piece here as the next image. So you understand what I mean by you want your images to flow and more or less make sense in the sequence that you put them in. And moving on from that, I'm wanting to show off my consistent style. So I'm moving from this initial image that's very cartoony and expanding it into this more narrative space. And then moving off of that, you can see I have this lovely red line work here in the middle. So this next piece really shows that off and is a different version of the painting in the middle. So there's a continuity you notice in the portfolio as we're going through the artist's hand and how they manipulate the surface to make the images. You can see there's a clear style and a way of working. Here again, with Pondering the Orb, I have the red line work. I'm marrying my painting and drawing approaches, and I'm showing off how I can move between painting and drawing, while still giving you a sense that there's a lot of emphasis on my vision and my visual disability with this cone vision. Moving from that, I give you a straight up drawing to highlight the fact that I can draw too. And the content of the work still reflects my artistic point of view with the disability. You can see there's notes on mark making, but also blindness. And I'm quoting that first piece of the figure on the bed as the art piece that the artist is drawing. Moving on from that, I have the same hairstyle and the same figure, but I move back to painting with here. And so I'm using this vernacular, but I'm moving back to painting. And now I keep going. So in this painting here, you can see that the figure is holding a Polaroid, and now we get to see what the Polaroid is of. And there's a little bit of humor there because it was a margarita night. Moving on from there, I'm showing more of my recent work where I'm trying to visually convey my vision getting more abstract. So these are point of view paintings from my point of view. So I include a couple of pieces there, and these are fresh. These aren't even actually finished yet, but I put them in here to show you. And then I close out with a very strong piece that sort of ties a few things together. There's some references to medical illustration. I have these big eyes at the back of my mind as my anxiety about blindness is always at the back of my mind. It lags behind as I walk through the world. I have the cane in here again to give me tactile sensory feedback and my avatar, but also this image too moves your eye around in a pleasing way. I've talked before about that, about how to compose effective images. So I'm showing my range too with how I structure my portfolio. So we're going to end there with the image list, and I'm going to toss it back to you. So I'd love to hear now the things that you do to make your portfolio pop, and let me know in the comments if I missed anything or if you still have any questions about how to create an effective portfolio. I do think that if you apply all the tips I gave you in this video, you can take your portfolio from good to great in terms of being competitive for the stuff that you want to apply to and the opportunities that you want to get as an artist. That's all for this week. Have a great one. I'll see you next time.